Unboxing the Garmin Fenix 6S Pro and potentially comparing it to the FORERUNNER 255S. So now we open up the package. This should be fairly easy. The main reason I got this watch instead of the other one I already have, and probably will send this back, is because I did want the additional features that come with the 6S. Because the 6S is the Pro watch basically, and this is the watch itself. So now we can take a look at it. Premium multi-sport watch, Fenix 6S. The 6S is the smaller version. There is also a normal version which is more millimeters. This is 42 millimeters in diameter. This is actually 41 millimeters. The Galaxy watch in comparison is 40 millimeters in diameter. So this is the main watch I currently have, and I do want to expand basically my fitness tracking. So what do we have in here? We have 9 days of watch mode, 25 hours of GPS mode. The case size is 42 millimeters. The display size is 1.2 inch. The total weight is 59 kilograms. And military STD tested 810G. It also has music availability. It also has a power manager, Pace Pro, and trendline popularity routing, and pulse ox, which means it also measures the saturation of oxygen in your blood. And this is what it looks like. I think it already kind of looks a little bit more professional than the other one, and I think I already like this look. So on this watch, as you can see, there is quite a little bit of bezel, and on this watch here, there's a little bit less bezel. So this is refurbished and this is new. And another reason I actually got this watch, because it just was all around kind of the better deal. With this here, you have kind of limited card availability, and also a few other features just might be not there because it's not the top of the line model. So in Garmin Connect, the app Samsung provides you with, you can access certain features only if you have a certain watch. And if you have the best watch you can possibly have, even if it's the old one from 2019, then you can potentially access more of these features. Another argument is that, of course, the newer watches will have newer software, potentially. And another big differentiation is that this watch, the FORERUNNER 255, because it's a newer watch, has the new sensor. This is the 4th version of the Garmin health sensor, and this version has an older version. So I figured quite a little bit, and I tinkered a little bit around. And as you can see here already, the watch band looks kind of rough already, which is not that big of a problem. Why? Because I actually already have a different band. I do have the same band, which I also have on the Galaxy watch. And I ordered this from Amazon for, again, 11 euros, which means I then have 2 watches on my 2 hands, and this band is on the... This band I also have for this watch, which was another reason, because as I realized, and I didn't research it enough, this is 18 millimeters in terms of the quick release band, and this here has a 20 millimeter quick release. What is also noteworthy is that this watch here costs new about 240 euros, but I actually only got it for 360, so not around 240, around 340 euros. And I got it actually for 365 euros, because there were other shops compared to Amazon, and these other shops, I looked at one and this had a very bad review, people were saying that the company didn't accept any returns, which would not be something that is very useful, especially if I am not entirely sure about this watch. I got this watch mostly because it's the smallest watch that still has basically almost all of the features I wanted. Nevertheless, if I do want to hike, if I do want to maybe use this also as a navigation device, then I think it is useful that I also have the 6S, so basically the top of the line, because what I then have is the complete card functionality, at least as I understand it. There are a few other exclusive features that are only available on the top of the line watches. There are actually newer features that are only available on these newer watches, so the Garmin 7S, for example, or the 7, and one of these would be that you can measure your stamina, basically how much you have left in the tank, while you cannot measure it, it shows it to you while you are working out. So in terms of weight now, this is a little bit heavier, as I'm noticing already. So the main reason I think is this is made at least to some parts of metal. So some parts of this are made of metal. This, for example, the back is made of metal, and also this seems to be a metal ring. In between we have it seems plastic, and this here is all around plastic. This means this is potentially lighter. I actually think of this as kind of a Whoop without a subscription and additional smartwatch functionality. Not really smartwatch functionality. This is also the reason I am keeping the Galaxy Watch 4, because I still want a smartwatch on my wrist. And also another problem I had was that so ideally you would have a smartwatch that would also be your fitness tracking device, and that would last for days potentially. Because the main problem with this here, with the Galaxy Watch 4, is that even though it has all these features and it acts as my second phone, as my emergency phone, whenever I potentially need it, I am out, maybe tracking because I'm on a bike or because I'm on a run, then after 2 or 3 hours, I don't have battery anymore. So in all of these cases, I would need to potentially call someone. I would need potentially help or something like this. This watch probably is just out of battery, and I will also not be able to pay with this watch, even though it has LTE. And these watches do not have LTE. There is only one from Garmin that has LTE, which is the FORERUNNER 945, and they seemingly discontinued it, or at least maybe they are planning it for the next version. But now let's compare maybe the size of these watches a little bit close up to the camera, and the size difference is not that big. This is also one of the reasons I actually got this watch now, because refurbished this cost me 319 and this cost me 365 new. So in addition, what is also not on here is there is no Garmin logo on here, which I think just looks a little bit cleaner. Of course there are these other things, and you cannot rotate this here, and you also cannot rotate this on here. And this also doesn't have a touch screen. Only the newer Fenix watches, so the 7 series, does have a touchscreen, which could be a little bit of a problem if it is a refurbished watch. But let's first of all try to exchange the quick release loop, because that's kind of the first step, and then I will actually try it on. A potential downside, so let's try this on here. I think I need to push this down, which is actually quite a little bit of an invention, you could say. I do have a little bit of trouble figuring out how to remove this. So there are these 2 pins on both sides, and if you press this here basically, or if you pull this, then only it looks like this. But the problem is that how do I then remove the strip here? Because in the band I have, there is a strip already. So I would potentially have to remove this some way or another. Now, additionally, what we have in the box, maybe let's discuss this first, is a cable. And this also looks a little bit rough already. The watch itself also kind of looks a little bit rough. And the band itself is not something I would potentially wear. I mean, I probably would wear it if it is the only thing I have, but I would probably order a new one. But I already have a new one, which is obviously a different one. We also don't have an original charger. This seems to be a replacement charger. Maybe the person who actually had this watch before just didn't deliver the charger to these people, and we have the cable. So something noteworthy is that this cable attaches to the Garmin watches on their back. So we have on the back here, we have the connector, and then you plug it in like this, and then the cable sticks out, so you cannot wear the watch. You could potentially wear the Galaxy Watch 4, and slide the quick charging panel, or not quick charging, but just the charger underneath. It's kind of a round thing. And so much about the additional accessories. There is also a few papers in there which we might need in order to release the quick release cable, or the quick release band. So I did flip through both of these instructions, and seemingly the only thing you can do is to remove the band, which then leaves you with these pins. And I do not really know how to get these pins off, and therefore I basically then don't have the possibility to get these other bands onto here. So now the second part is off, and now I do have the watch itself. And now the question is if and whether, it's seemingly. So if we take a look at this up close, then what we have in here is kind of not a feather. Hopefully I will be able to find this. But as usual, these are kind of not quick, but loaded, spring loaded. So therefore I just got them out. In addition, now the second one I probably can also get out very easily. And there it is. So now I have the watch itself. tapped by my fingerprints already, and now I can insert this band. So now the question is, how do I insert this band? I think it makes the most sense if you have it like this, and then the double side, so the side basically where two of the loops are going, if you pull it inwards, it's pulling the band in the direction of the other hand, which is the most convenient because otherwise you would have to kind of move around. So therefore, I now want to mirror this, and I want to have this here on here. In order to then view the watch correctly, I have to first realize or see how it actually is rotated. I think it's this way. So therefore, this would be the way to go. I actually just saw there is a little bit of a logo on there. It is just much smaller and it also is gray. I don't know if you can see it, but it is down here. So now as a next step, I will probably take all of these materials we have collected so far, thus far, and we will just put them in the box, because otherwise I will potentially lose them. Also, this seems to be quite useful. Another big benefit of buying refurbished watches is that I can resell them at any point in time. So I already considered the Garmin 7S because of the additional features, but it just didn't really make financial sense. Why? Because this cost me 319 euros, and therefore by switching to this watch, I'm saving basically 35 to 40 euros from this watch, because this watch is new. Of course, the battery life might be a little bit more limited, but in terms of the scratches, I don't really mind the scratches because I would make these scratches into the watch anyway after a few weeks, and therefore I don't have to ruin a new watch. And now I also can resell again this watch at any point in time. Another consideration was the following. In terms of size, the other watch is, even though 41 millimeters and this one is 40 millimeters, I think this looks a lot closer compared to the other ones. And they also look a little bit more similar. So therefore, both watches look a little bit more symmetrical. In terms of replacing my Casio watch, there's actually is not a big problem because of the special display it has on here. So this display doesn't need lighting. And the same is true for the Garmin watches, because they also don't need lighting, because they don't need internal lighting because they reflect actually the external lighting, which also makes it possible to view a watch like this in sunlight, whereas a watch like this needs to pump the brightness up to 11 in order for you to even see something at all. And often what I found is that you don't see something at all with these watches, and also with AMOLED screens on your phone. In terms of turning the watch on, there are 3 buttons on this side and 2 buttons on this side, and then I just press, I think, this button, and hopefully it will actually turn on. As you can already see, there is this logo appearing, this play button. As a next step, as you can see, the center which refurbished the product did actually not clean the watch apparently, so they just shipped it as is. And now the watch is already turning on, and you can see the display already. And this display allows you to put on a watch face that is even similar to a Casio watch. For this reason, I can replace finally my Casio watch, and since this has tactile buttons, it's basically a Casio watch, but much better. In order to now clean this watch, I do have a bottle, a sprayer bottle with alcohol, and I would just clean it with a towel. So the main thing I think about this watch, so the main downside of this watch in my eyes, is that it doesn't have the new sensors. So I do want the most accurate data. If the heart rate data or the HRV data, for example, is maybe 10% less accurate on the older watches, this is potentially the biggest downside of this watch, because all the other downsides are basically don't matter that much. Another big bummer would be if some of the new features, like not body battery, because body battery has been around for I don't know how long, but it seems that it has been a feature for years, that features like these, and training readiness, for example, seems to be also kind of a newer feature, but I also don't really know, because as long as you don't have a watch connected to Garmin Connect, you just don't know what Garmin Connect actually shows you. So now we already see kind of the sensor. The Galaxy Watch, for example, has 2 different LEDs in there, or not really LEDs. I don't know if these are LEDs, but I guess so. Now the watch is fairly clean, so now we can connect the band, and then we can take a look at how it looks on my wrists. In order for reference, maybe, I am 1 meters and 82 centimeters, so pretty close to 6 inch, or pretty much 6 inch. So I do have smaller wrists, which is kind of the reason I got this watch, because I, first of all, don't want to have a very big watch on my wrist. So, of course, I could have a bigger watch on my wrist, but I just don't want something that does feel like I want to take it off. Because ideally, you want to measure, I think, at least in my eyes, or ideally for me, I would have a device like this on at all times. So this is kind of the only way the HRV data, the body battery, and so is more accurate. Because if you don't have it on you, let's just say 6 hours a day or 3 hours a day, and this is actually kind of what is happening with this watch, because I constantly, not constantly, but 2 to 3 hours a day, at least I need to charge it before I go to bed, before I go to the morning training, and before I go to the evening training, if I go to either of these. So now the watch is on, and it is ready to connect, and I now can put it on my arm. And now we can test if it was the right one. Of course, this band now is a little bit newer, and I'm not entirely sure. There seems to be some resistance, a little bit more of resistance compared to the older band. Because it is flexible over time, it also kind of degrades a little bit in quality and flexibility, but it seems to be fairly tight. And another big benefit of having a band like this is whenever you actually want to measure, you take a health snapshot, for example. I don't know if these will be available on here, but they were available on the 255. Where is it actually? On the 255, the health snapshots were available. So this means you take 2 minutes and then it measures your HRV, because your HRV, your heart rate variability, apparently only can be measured if you keep your arm still. And during the day you don't, therefore this is kind of a reason then for you to keep your arm still, and then you can measure it. In terms of profile, I already noticed that this is heavier, and of course this is not really the profile, but what I'm also noticing here, there seems to be a slight problem with the band, but this of course is a little bit slimmer in total. I mean, just comparing this like here, you can see that this watch is also just a little bit slimmer, thinner, you could say. But at the same time, I think this is kind of a better look, at least compared to the normal bands you get with the Garmin watches. And also these bands, after about 1 day, for me usually, they tend to ache a little bit, not ache, but itch a little bit. And so this is also something I wanted to avoid. And I did not really look up a 18mm band, but I just wanted these two watches on my two hands to be as symmetrical as possible. Because additionally, if you go out for a run, for example, and you have 2 different weights on your 2 different hands, which I have now, this is approximately 20 grams heavier, but nevertheless, and so the other watch would have been the better one, but in terms of style, in terms of looks, I think this is a more equal distribution of these 2 watches. It is almost not noticeable, I would say, if you don't take a closer look, that these are 2 different watches. Of course it is, but less so compared to a Casio watch, and on the other hand I would have this. Now, the whole idea of having 2 smartwatches on your 2 hands might be ridiculous, but many people also have a smartwatch and a Whoop on their hands or also somewhere else. Now, additionally, in order to bulk up this watch, what I additionally can do is I can use this cover I already have. The only problem with this cover is whenever I shower, it gets filled with water in between, and because you have 3 layers where they can... So you have 3 layers of dirt, the outside of the case, the inside of the case, and then the screen itself, which can also get dirty. So you have kind of an obscured view onto the display. So now I have these 2 watches ready, and I think this will conclude the unboxing. I mean, of course I don't know if the battery life will hold up, and I also don't have any reference point at all, because I did not have the same exact model, just in new. But I also think it makes the most financial sense to get this watch for half the price compared to the Fenix. The Fenix would have been available refurbished for 600 euros, and this is 319. New, the Fenix 7S, maybe also with the solar option, would have been even pricier. There is also a solar option for this watch, but the problem I saw is that it at least seemed to me that the color option, so this was kind of a weird color, it was kind of violet and grayish, and I just wanted a black watch, because I don't want to have a violet watch. I try to keep all things black, as you are probably seeing here, and therefore I just wanted a black watch. And so the solar option was not really an option for me. Usually the solar option sells for €100 more, at least new on the Garmin website. And there is also a solar option for the 7S, which comes again only in gray, and the normal version I think comes in black. So, but the gray is also similar to this here. So it is kind of just gray on this here, and the rest of the watch I think is also black. The 7S has also kind of a colored button on here, and there is also a lock on this button. So for people who might accidentally record workouts because they have the bigger watch and then they do push-ups and then they accidentally might stop the workout or something like this, this would potentially prevent this from happening. So there is a kind of a lock to this, to the newer 7S or to the other 7 series watches as well. An additional question might be why I still have a Galaxy Fit, because whenever I charge this watch I track steps with this. This cost me €40, and therefore, and in return for the €40 I do have a device that more accurately, that in total results in a more accurate step count, because I often do not have my phone in my pocket when I charge my watch. And so this was kind of the thinking about this. In total, I think already I know what the decision will be. I will send back the other watch, even though I wasn't entirely sure. But now after seeing this watch and after kind of feeling it and also seeing it on here, I think it makes total sense to just keep this watch as kind of the best thing I could get, just an older version of it. And for €319, it's cheaper, it has probably more features, and we probably also will find out about these features in the next thing, which will be connecting the watch to Garmin Connect and then seeing, maybe after a day or two, what the features are actually like and what features will become available maybe after a few days, because for some features you have to establish a baseline. The body battery became available after, so with the other watch I wore it for a few hours just to check which features would be available, and the body battery was available after like 1 day and 1 night of sleep. But training readiness, for example, which also seemed to be available, at least according to the things you could check in the feed, didn't appear, at least after this 1 day.